Hey, how's it going, everybody? So, as some of you may have heard or have not heard, Square Enix has decided to basically drop exclusivity with the PlayStation brand. So recently they've announced that they are going to be aggressively pushing towards multi-platform releases after a report of how many losses that they've had in the past year or so with the exclusivity of a lot of their games, such as Final Fantasy 16, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. Those games were exclusive to the PlayStation 5. And that definitely cost them a lot of sales. I mean, in particular, they indicated that basically they have lost about 141 million dollars worth, and they've had to deal with this loss. And even though Sony pays them a certain amount for exclusivity rights, it's not enough to cover their losses. And this is a thing I've thought about for a long time now, because one of my biggest issues with the exclusivity of Final Fantasy is that, like, Final Fantasy 15, which you can see that I'm playing here. This is old footage of me playing 15, but 15 was multi-plat. It was on PS4 and Xbox One. So regardless of which console you had, oh, and it's on PC as well. So regardless of which console you have, or if you want to play it on PC, it's available, and that's nice. Being able to play a big franchise like Final Fantasy on whatever console of your choices. Now, in my previous video, I mentioned how, I was thinking about getting an Xbox One. Sorry, not Xbox One, Xbox Series S or an Xbox Series X this year. I'm still not 100% sure on that. I still would like to get a new console, but like I said, there's not enough incentive. One of the biggest things that was bothering me was that I was particularly interested in the Xbox. This is before the whole recent Microsoft, the whole Xbox thing with them getting rid of like 4 studios and all that. Before all that, bullshit stuff that happened recently, I was considering getting an Xbox Series S because I like the Game Pass thing. I like the fact that I can play a bunch of my old digital games that I had on my 360. I sold my old 360 to my younger brother a few years ago, so I haven't played an Xbox in a long time. And I was missing playing Xbox games, and I know Xbox doesn't have a lot of exclusives, but I just thought it would be fun to try something different from PlayStation, because I haven't been happy with PlayStation and Sony in a while. So one of the biggest things for me was the fact that, like, Final Fantasy, I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan. I love the Final Fantasy series. I bought Final Fantasy 7 Remake when it came out back on the PS4, and I was very disappointed that I wasn't able, the biggest thing for me was the fact that these games are exclusive. So if I decided to go with Xbox this generation, if I decided to buy a Series S or a Series X instead of a PS5, I wouldn't be able to play it. Now, back when the game came out on PS4, it wasn't an issue for me because I already had a PS4. But now that I, don't have a PS5 or a new Xbox, I start to realize, like, I understand how people who don't have the proper console feel. They feel left out, And when it comes to consoles, it's not always about exclusives on why people choose them. Now, I did mention in my last video how exclusives can really make a big difference on you choosing what you want to, have a console for. It definitely helps you with your purchase. But at the same time, some people just prefer a console because they prefer the style of that console, right? They prefer the way the controller feels. Like, some people prefer the Xbox controller. Some people prefer the Xbox, like, just the brand in general. Maybe they grew up with it, like my friend did. My friend grew up with Xbox more than he did with anything else. He grew up with Xbox and Nintendo, but he was never a PlayStation person. He never had a PlayStation. So for him naturally, he just went with the Xbox because he was able to play his 360 games backwards compatible. Game Pass works for him. I grew up with PlayStation. I already had a PS3. I got a PS4, and then I usually had all 3 main consoles usually, but in the last few years, but like, it's at least before the last decade or so, the last 20 years, I've always at least had 2 or 3 of the consoles. I was lucky enough to be able to have that, but not everybody has that privilege, especially nowadays with consoles being so expensive. And So I feel like the exclusivity thing is definitely a big thing that makes it difficult for people wanting to be able to play a certain franchise such as Final Fantasy, which is a huge franchise. I mean, Square Enix lost a lot of money not being able to multi-plat this. You know, basically Sony had them by a chokehold, basically going like, yeah, you're gonna make this just for us, you know. And you know, Square Enix has had its issues. You know, everyone knows that Square Enix is not a perfect company. There's no such thing as any perfect companies. Square Enix has had its low moments, you know, but I am happy that they're deciding to do this. That they based on their words, that they're going to be. This is their words. They're going to aggressively pursue a multi-platform strategy that includes Nintendo platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, and basically to build an environment where most customers can enjoy their titles, in regardless of the console or platform that they play on. So I'm really happy to hear about this. Unfortunately, there's also the news of the layoffs because they've announced two things: the platform, the multi-platform aggressive strategy they're going to be using, releasing their games on multi-platform, different platforms. But there's also been a large number of layoffs due to company restructuring, and so there's going to be layoffs in the U.S. and Europe, as basically Square Enix is trying to restructure itself at this point. So, and it's unfortunate. Those things tend to happen in these companies. They're basically, based on the article I'm reading, they're basically trying to rebuild their overseas business divisions from the ground up. And you know, I can understand that. I mean, they've suffered their losses with a lot of stuff, and I'm really hoping that whatever Square Enix does in the future, it's a good thing, because I think that some companies are starting to realize that, like, the exclusivity thing and certain things like that just doesn't work. And Final Fantasy, like, there's plenty of people that would have loved to have played it on Xbox, to have that option, you know, or to have certain options to play certain ones on the Switch. I mean, obviously the Switch isn't going to be able to handle Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but going forward, once we get the successor to the Switch, and you know, we can, and all that stuff, we can finally have other games on there, you know, that are Final Fantasy related. They did release Crisis Core Reunion on Nintendo Switch, but the Rebirth games, the remake trilogy, has been specifically on the PlayStation. I read somewhere that the third part of the remake trilogy is supposedly going to be Sony exclusive at first, but I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me on that. I'm hoping that as time moves forward, we'll get it would be great to get a re-release of FF7 remake and Rebirth on the, you know, it would be great to have it on the Xbox brand, and you know, available for people on other consoles as well, you know, other platforms. Like, it's just in general, like, we have Final Fantasy VII remake on PC. It did come to PC eventually, and I'm sure Rebirth will eventually come to PC as well, but it takes a while. It takes a while for that to happen, and I feel bad for the people who weren't able to play it on Xbox. So overall, my thoughts on this are that I think this is a good move on Square Enix's part. It was really good news. It really made me glad that they're going away with the exclusivity thing, because Square Enix has a large library of games that they could, you know, make more money off of if they just put it on multi-platforms. This whole exclusivity shit with, you know, Final Fantasy has been really annoying lately, and I'm really glad that they'll be able to expand to other things. So if I do end up getting an Xbox, I can play Final Fantasy, because that was the main thing. That was the only game that I was interested in so far in this generation, was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And 16, I mean, I was interested in. I'm not the biggest fan of the way it looks, but I'll give it a try. So, you know, Final Fantasy I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan, so for me it was a big a deal to be able to play it. And so I was like, it's only on PS5, but what if I want to get an Xbox this generation instead, you know? So right now it's all up in the air, but we'll see what happens. If any new information comes out regarding re-releases of any previous Final Fantasy games on the Xbox, I'll definitely cover that. On the Xbox, you can play older Final Fantasies, but it's the more recent ones that have been exclusive. So, really hoping that this new decision going forward has a positive effect overall on the games being released by Square Enix. It is unfortunate, and my heart goes out to those people that got laid off. That really sucks. I really hope Square Enix is able to at least do something positive with their restructuring, but it is unfortunate that people were laid off. And that's something that's going to be happening in the game industry for a while. It's just been happening for a while already. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. That's all I really got to say on this topic. Don't want to make this video too long. But yeah, guys, I'll keep covering footage, not footage, but news on this stuff. And anything else that I feel like talking about regarding video games, Square Enix, Final Fantasy, anything at all. So, alright guys, have a nice day. Take it easy. Bye.